Welcome. My name is Laura. I'm the graduate student leader of the Plant Breeding Genetics Circle. Dr. Russ Jessup is going to be also in charge of organizing the adventure. Of course, Dr. Smith as well. So today we have Ron Smith, who is editor of the Southwest Farm Press. He's coming from Houston, Texas today. And he has been with the Southwest Farm Press since 1978, so I'm sure he has a lot to tell us. So let's welcome him.
Thank you. For one thing, it's always intimidating when you talk to a crowd that you know when you stand up that everybody is smarter than you are. And I have a master's degree in English literature, and I don't know how I got to where I am, but I cannot imagine having spent the last 30-something years doing anything other than what I've done. I have a short, and it really is short, PowerPoint that I want to go through. Well, just have some pictures on it. But what I would like to do is have more of a conversation and a discussion. I would like to hear as much from you as you hear from me, because I think what's going to happen in the next 30 or 40 years, a lot of it is going to come through people like you. And that's basically the crux of what I want to tell you, is that I think you face a lot of challenges in your career, and I do congratulate you for choosing something as difficult and as important. In 40 years, we're going to be looking at 9 billion people on the planet. I know you've all heard this before, 9 billion people. And that means a lot for agriculture, because you're going to have to produce food for those people. You're going to have to produce clothes for those people. They're going to have places to live, water to drink, and they're going to have other things like Walmart. And why is that important? Well, Walmart is going to take up a lot of the land that we now need for agriculture. Walmarts and apartment complexes, shopping centers, schools, churches, highways. So in 40 years, you're probably going to have to produce about twice as much food as we are today, and you're going to do it on a lot less land, and you're probably going to have to do it on less water. 9 billion people. That's going to be your job, is to feed those people. Are you scared yet? No. And you have a lot of obstacles. And we know in Texas, the biggest one. Well, we're probably in the third year of what some people think may be a 10-year cycle of drought. That's way beyond my pay grade, but it's you know how bad it is. You can walk outside today and tell how bad it is. And weather is a constant. It changes. You have drought. You have hailstorms. I mean, that's a corn crop that I saw last year in northeast Texas. There's nothing left there. And water. I think water is. I don't think I go to a meeting anymore that there's not some discussion of water and availability and the legal issues around it and where we're going to get it. Currently there is efforts now to get Mexico to provide water out of the Rio Grande that they're supposed to provide it and have it. And so it's an international problem, it's a state problem, it's a county by county problem, and somebody's going to have to figure it out. And I think part of your challenge is to figure out how we can use less of it. It doesn't take long for a field like you just saw to turn into something like that, and it can get really bad. Yeah, I don't think there's anybody in here who was around for the Dust Bowl. Maybe there are, but I don't think we're going to see that again, because I think we've learned a lot about how to grow crops and how to take care of soil and rotation and tillage, but it can be bad, as you know. It's unpredictable. And these were all within the last couple of years. There are other challenges. This is bull riding down around San Angelo. They're making progress on that because of work done at Texas A&M and some other places. They found some chemistry that finally works, but this has been one of the biggest problems in blackland cotton for about 100 years. I think I'm right on that, Blaine. I think some of the first research done in Texas was on cotton root rot, and they still haven't totally solved it. So that's a challenge. Insects are always going to be trouble. Nutrient deficiency. This is what they told me, and most of what I know is what somebody told me was iron fluorosis. Does that sound right? Because it was so dry. This was in Corpus Christi early in the spring, and one of the ugliest fields of grain I've ever seen. Most of it was just yellow. And then there are the weeds. Resistant pigweed. We thought for a while we might dodge that bullet unless you were a soil scientist or a weed specialist and they knew it was coming. Paul Bowman has told me for years, ever since I moved to Texas. I've been to Texas for going on 15 years. And I think one of the first meetings where I met Paul, he says, it's not a matter of if we're going to get resistance to pigweed, it's just a matter of when. It's already there, we just haven't selected for it yet. And we're kind of, increasingly other parts of the state than we thought it would be. Sometimes we get it right. This is a cornfield in northeast Texas, and strangely enough, I didn't figure they were going to make 30 bushels an acre this year, and they're cutting close to 100. And this is dryland corn, and part of that is good management, part of it is good varieties, and part of it is just good luck. They got 2 or 3 rains when they absolutely needed it, and turned what could have been a disaster into a fairly good crop. A success story, except for a few places in the Rio Grande Valley, the boll weevil is not an economic threat anywhere in the United States. And for many, many years, it basically destroyed cotton. When I first started working in agriculture, I was an experiment station editor at Clemson University. And down in Florence, South Carolina, the USDA had a boll weevil nursery. They actually raised boll weevils for years and years and years just to find ways to kill them. And I suspect that has gone out of business now. And it was one of those programs that, and most of it I'm sure too young to remember, it started in the corner of North Carolina and Virginia. And everywhere, it just slowly went down into the southeast and across the mid-south and all the way across into California. And everywhere it went, it was met with skepticism and lawsuits, and people said it won't work and it's too expensive, and when we kill boll weevils, we kill everything else, and we're losing too much money for it to work. Within 3 years of starting the program, just about everywhere it went, they were making between 200 and 300 more pounds of cotton per acre. They were not having to deal with the boll weevil. Instead of spraying 14 times a summer, they were spraying maybe 2 or 3. And as I said, it's almost totally eradicated everywhere but the Rio Grande Valley, and it probably would have been there, but we're still getting some cross the border migration from Mexico. And I think that's going to be the last hurdle, and it's going to be a hard one probably to solve. But it is one of the issues that because of agricultural research and a lot of dedication, we finally made some progress. Sometimes we hit it big. That's probably 4 bale cotton. around Brownfield, Texas. New variety cotton. This is probably, I suspect that was FiberMax. I don't know that for sure, but it was several years ago. And there's another cotton breeding success story, I believe, because this is, I'm sure it was GMO cotton. It's probably BT and I'm sure Roundup Ready. It was another one of those things when they first brought it out, they weren't getting the yields, but now they're making routinely on good irrigated cotton, they're making 3.5 and 4 bales. We need more of these. This is a little boy in Seminole, Texas. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. He was 3 years old, and every day when his daddy went to the field, he went with him. And he wanted to farm. He could tell me the name of every implement on that farm and what it did and how to hook it up. And he was a delightful little guy. And I think the last I heard from him, he's showing horses, and it's probably still just absolutely dedicated to coming back to that farm. Okay, where will 9 billion people live in 40 years? Well, they're not going to live in rural America. They're not going to live in rural anywhere, I don't think, because the people who are supposed to know say that the migration is going to be the big cities. They're going to move where they can get services, where they hope they can find jobs, where they can find transportation services. This is a shop way down there in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a fairly densely populated area, and there are going to be a lot of those mega centers where the population just explodes. Along the coast, it will be a big draw. So the people are going to be concentrated, and there's going to be a lot of pressure on providing sanitation, food, space, and again, I think water is going to be absolutely, it will be the next oil, and maybe it's already there in a lot of places. It is the critical factor, as we know, in agriculture. I mean, without water, we don't make anything. The good news is that you are employable. Because of all these things, what you are going to do is going to make you beneficial. It's going to make people want to hire you. And you are, I think, going to be the leaders of agriculture, because what you're doing, and I would like for you to tell me a little bit about it too. I don't understand genetics. I know that there was somebody named Mendel, and there was somebody that messed around with fruit flies, and that's about as far as my genetics go. What I do know, I know about farmers, because I've been working with them since 1976. And I know they look to agricultural experiment stations. They look to extension. They look to research to find better ways to do what they've always done. But they need ways to do it more efficiently. They need to be able to grow more on fewer acres. And then I think they're going to need to do it on less water. I don't think you'll ever do it without water, but they need to do it with less. I was at I was telling Laura, I spoke to a Rotary Club last week about this same time. And there were 3 or 4 people in there who the guy who invited me, who reads Southwest Farm Press occasionally, had invited because they knew something about agriculture. But everybody else they were lawyers and they were doctors. They were business people, and they were probably 3 or 4 generations removed from a family farm. And so they had some interesting questions. One of them, he said, I have 2 questions. One is it possible to develop a corn that will grow in cold weather so that it's not subject to heat so much. And I said, maybe. I said it would be very, very difficult because corn is basically a crop that needs some hot weather. It needs heat units to be able to mature. But I said I wouldn't shortchange what a plant geneticist can do. I mean, it's not beyond the realm. To me, it's not beyond the realms of possibility. You may know better. I don't, but I know that plants have been adapted for all kinds of different climatic conditions. The other thing he asked me, I thought that was a pretty intelligent question. The other thing he asked me was, I see all this corn up around North Texas that has just died in the field, and I wonder, did the farmers just let that die so they could collect the government payment? He said, I go to Kroger and I pick up corn and it's green and all this is dead. I said, well, this is not Kroger corn. I mean, he didn't understand that basically this is field corn, and you don't harvest it while it's green. You harvest it when it's dry, when the moisture gets down to 13, 14, 15%, and you take a combine in and you cut it, and the stalks look dead, but the corn is still alive. But he just didn't understand that. They asked me questions about immigration reform, and that's also way above my pay grade to be able to figure that out. But it's something that this is what they've heard in the news. In the presentation I made to them, I talked about the need for technology. And the crux of the talk was that the family farm is still alive and well. It's just not the same family farm that their grandparents or great-grandparents grew up on with 40 acres and a mule, and maybe it was a subsistence farm in somewhere in South Texas. But it's still a family farm. It may be 10,000 acres of a mixture of cotton and corn or wheat or whatever. It may be peanuts and maybe some cattle. It may be a sheep ranch, and it may be a 20,000 acre conglomerate that has all of that. And it may be a huge ranch that covers the size of a small county. But most of them are still family owned, family operated, and they typically transition from one family member to the next generation. It's not always an easy transition, but that's usually how it happens. Sometimes it goes to a son or a daughter, and I still see a lot of farms that have 3 generations farming together, a grandfather, a father, and his son. And I told him that the thing that amazes me about that and makes me believe that family farm is going to survive and be sustainable for many years is that they don't do it just so they get a government check. They do it because they love it, and they do it because they love that piece of dirt. That they want to make sure that their son, when he starts farming it or she starts farming it, that it's in, I'm sorry. I am seeing more and more young ladies come back to the farm and take over, and I think it's a great idea. But whichever comes back, the family wants it in better shape than when they got it, and they do things to make that happen. All kind of tillage and better use of water. And just taking better care of the land than probably it has ever been taken before. The other thing that I told them was that they need technology, and I think this is one of the places where you guys are going to play an incredibly important role. They need technologies with chemistry. They need chemistry that I know that safer is not the proper word, but that's what we're talking about. Safer for non-target animals and other insects, safer for the people who use it, safer for the environment, the water, the soil, and they also need the technology that goes into the seed. And there is a great deal of misinformation about technology, and particularly genetically modified organisms. And I think when they 25 years ago when they started working on it. They did a great job. And this was mostly, at that time, Monsanto. They did a great job of communicating the advantages of genetically modified organisms to the industry and to farmers, and they did such a poor job of giving information to the consumer, and that's why there's such a backlash on it now. I had an email a couple of weeks ago from a reader, and I don't know where he was from. He could be from Nebraska or Massachusetts or California or South Texas. But he was chastising me for writing stories that were pro-GMO. And he said, Ron, do you want your children or grandchildren to be deformed and die of cancer because of genetically modified organisms? And he said, Roundup is poison, and why would you eat a seed with Roundup in it? You can't make this stuff up. So, he believed that somehow they had put Roundup into the seed, and that you grow corn. He was particularly interested in corn. And then you eat that seed and you get Roundup in your body. And that is just so wrong in so many different ways. And I had another one said, Ron, would you please send me some scientific information about the safety of genetically modified organisms? So I've collected a few. World Health Organization has some pretty good information. But in collecting them, I also found some that are just so bad that they defy any sense of logic at all. But the difference is, and I may send him one of these, I'm not sure yet, because they're so biased and so wrong, and they have no attribution. There is no research behind them. It's anecdote. Somebody did a research in South Africa or somewhere in Europe or somewhere in China, and 4 rats died, and the chickens were sterile. But there's no documentation, and it's just misinformation. And I guess for years it's been one of my disappointments, I guess, that as a communicator and as a writer, that I don't reach those people. The people I reach, for the most part, understand what I'm talking about, and they understand the need for technology, and they understand the need for big equipment, and they understand the need for size, that you can do more economically on 100 acres than you can on 35. But the general public is not getting that information. They're getting information from Mother Earth News and the Environmental Working Group. Y'all know what the Environmental Working Group is? You've heard of these? You need to look them up. It is an organization basically that they go after the farm bill every time it comes up, and hey Steve, do it. They complain that it basically just gives money away to farmers, and that it increases pollution, it encourages obesity. I suspect dandruff too, but they've never actually made it. But it's an organization that's basically anti-modern agriculture. Google it, Google it and see what they say. But this is where they get their information from PETA. PETA. Y'all know what PETA is? People eating tasty animals. But they believe these people because they have better PR than we do. They have access to an audience that basically we don't get to. And I think there's been some inroads made. There's an organization called The Hand That Feeds Us that provides this kind of the realistic information about agriculture that has some science behind it, and some actual real life intelligence instead of something that somebody makes up. A lot of these organizations they have a lot of hoop and holler but they don't do very much, and a lot of their money goes to administrative costs and paying some CEO a lot of money. But that's been a frustration most of my career is how do you get that information, and I think that's something as you start a career that you should be aware of. And I know a lot of researchers that do the research, but they don't talk about it much. And most of you, if you were really interested in writing, you would have majored in English. But at least figure out ways that you can communicate. I think it's one of the most important things that agriculture needs to do better. And I would also welcome any suggestions to how we can do better. What do we need to do to tell your story better? I was telling Laura I would like to hear from you. Send me emails as you get into the semester and tell me what you think you want to do. Tell me what you think your job is going to be in 5 years or 10 years, and how you see your opportunity to change the world. Because I think what you do has that potential. I've had two. These have both been in the last 4 or 5 years. Two what I call extreme highlights of my career. One of them was back in April. I interviewed a farmer in Plainview, Texas, who was 98 years old and still farming every day. He gets on his tractor and he farms every day. He said he doesn't farm as much as he used to. He says he just doesn't think he would do a good job of it, of running a whole farm. But he farms the corners and the pivots. His sons farm the rest of it. But he installed drip irrigation under the corners of the pivots so he could try to make 4-bale cotton. So he's trying new things every day, and he's 98 years old. But he was one of the most interesting people and probably the most fun interview I've ever done. The other was several months before he passed away. I got an opportunity to meet Dr. Norman Borlaug. And I think if there is a person in our lifetime who changed the world, it was Norman Borlaug. He's credited with saving, I think, 1 billion people just because of the work he did, mostly with wheat, by making it so that it would grow in places where it just simply wouldn't grow before. Everybody wanted to talk to him. This was at his 85th birthday party that they had for him in Dallas, and he was already somewhat feeble and he tired easily, and a lot of people wanted to talk to him. But I did have a chance, maybe for 3 or 4 minutes, and I told him what an honor it was to meet him, and he told me that genetic engineering would be the basis for the next green revolution. And coming from him, I said, well, that's something you can kind of take to the bank. And I think we need other things other than GMOs. I know that a lot of you are working on, and Steve and I talked about this several weeks ago with a story I did with him about developing cotton the old-fashioned way. And I think that is going to be important because you have to have something to work with, and you have to have something that fits in other areas and specific areas. Like South Texas is different from the High Plains, and the High Plains is different from Mississippi, and that's different from Georgia. But what you are doing and is going to be so important. What are tell me some of the things you are working on? Corn? Anybody working on?
Yeah.
What's?
Well, the main things that our program concentrates on is aflatoxin resistance, of course.
Yes.
And drought are the main ones in
Yeah.
Texas.
You work with Seth?
Yes, Dr. Ray, yep.
He's in Italy this year. Is that right? That's why I've heard him. Yeah.
Vacation, Dr. Smith.
That's why he told me he was working.
I've heard that too.
I've been to Italy. He's not working. There's no corn in Rome. Does it, I know it's hard work. What do you love about it?
Honestly, what I enjoy the most is just being out in the field and actually seeing the crop that you maybe produced from cross, or as you're selfing through the generations, just seeing the actual plant out there, coping with the weather. Or if you're targeting for drought tolerance, seeing one or two hybrids that actually did yield fairly well, or that kind of thing. I just really like being out.
Did you grow up on a farm?
Yeah, I did.
Where, in Texas or?
No, I'm a Yankee, kind of Iowa, Midwest. I went to Iowa State. And
Did you have to get dipped when you came across the line?
Well, there's some Texans that tell me that you're really not in Texas until you're in the valley, south of an oasis. So.
Well, it depends on where they live. They'll tell you you're not really in Texas.
Yeah.
Cotton. We know cotton? Yeah.
Don't be bashful.
Can't stir them with a stick.
I met you at what was it, Steve's office. Tell me again what you're working on. And you're from South Carolina.
I am from South Carolina.
A wonderful human being. What was that? What was that great school you went to? Clemson University. Go
Are
Tigers.
they still in business?
Yeah, you were the elder Tigers, and they're not still in business. And tell me again, I just talked to you a little bit when I was here before. You working on
I work on insect resistance.
insect resistance? Yeah. And that's going to be critical. I mean, you don't have to worry about the boll weevil. Would this be is this with the GMO, or is this selection?
I'm just doing, like traditional selection. But I think it's a piercing sucking insect, and so I think the companies are trying to develop some sort of GMO to combat it, but they haven't been successful.
Yeah. Did you grow up on a farm?
No.
No. So how did you get wound up with this bunch of people?
I came here for entomology.
Etymology, okay.
And did my master's, and then switched over to plant breeding, and I still work a lot with entomology.
Yeah. What are some of the other things? Wheat? Small grains? Yeah. No? Yeah. What are you doing with small grains?
I work on wheat,
On wheat?
especially dealing with drought tolerance in the wheat.
Drought tolerance? Yeah.
Drought tolerance is real popular these days.
I wonder why. That's amazing. Yeah, I have written more stories on drought probably in the last 4 years than any other single topic, and it's one of those things that I think is probably one of the most depressing things to write on, but it always gives me something to do. If the picture of the held out corn, farmer can go out and look at that and he knows it's gone. I mean, it's busted. It's ruined. He's not going to make one ear out of that field, so he can go on about his business, contact his insurance agent and say, come and look at this and let's settle up. With drought, you look at it every day and say, please God, let it rain. And you go out the next day, you just say, well, it didn't rain yesterday, maybe it will today. And it seems to me that it takes just a little bit more out of your soul every day you watch that crop wither a little bit more. And then when you do that 3 years in a row, it's got to be just devastating. But they keep doing it. I guess that's what amazes me. They keep doing it, and they say, okay, that I'm going to do it again next year. And they somehow, even with this bad weather, they'll get a tenth of an inch of rain at just the right time, and they'll make part of a crop, and it'll be enough to keep them going for another year. Well, are you making any progress?
Results are showing little progress, so we are trying to improve the drought tolerance by integrating wax trait in the local awareness by traditional crossing.
Anybody working on selective weed resistance? I know there's some grain sorting work that's been done in Kansas.
Young man on the TV screen with the ball cap on.
Yeah, I've been playing around with some non-GMO ME resistance in cotton that's derived from more mutation breeding. And I've been doing some crossing and selection and trying to improve it and basically just do a genetics type behavioral study on it.
How far along are you?
Say again?
How much have you been able to get done?
Well, I inherited this material that a previous professor had worked on for, about 5 or 6 years. And so I took it and crossed it with something else and carried it on for another few years. There's an improved rate of tolerance, but it's a whole different kind of story in cotton because that gene's real complicated. So tolerance levels I don't think are, to where they'd be necessarily commercially acceptable, but there is a higher level of tolerance to where, in a worst case scenario, it would hurt the cotton a little bit, but it still survives and grows. But
Good. Thank you. Any of you want to go back to the farm? Yeah. Where's your farm?
Perryton, Texas, North Amarillo.
Yeah, way up there. Yeah. Grain sorghum and corn,
and wheat,
Wheat.
sorghum, and cotton.
and a lot of dry weather.
Make it rain there.
You make it rain, yeah. Y'all have gotten some rain this summer, right? A little bit, yeah. Yeah. Cattle up? No.
All on this side, depending on mom's side.
Yeah. Yeah, that kind of, that's sort of a, well, like A&M in Texas used to be, you're either cattle or you're cross. Mhm. What are you working on?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I work with cowpea.
Cowpea.
Yes. The future of the world.
I've heard of that. Tell me
Probably
why.
from Dr. Singh.
Been hanging around BB.
Tell me what's important about cowpea.
Cowpea is,
I know they're good.
they're delicious.
Yeah.
And
Put a little
they're-
bacon in them. little fat back.
No, just some garlic and
Just some.
onion.
Oh God. Ew.
They're high in protein. They're drought tolerant. You can eat the leaves. You can eat the seed. You can grow them practically anywhere around the world.
And they're also a livestock feed, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like 70 days to 80 days to grow.
Yeah.
Right.
I bet you didn't
Depending
eat
on
the leaves in South Carolina. No.
I went to Africa one time. I had a brother who did some time in the Peace Corps, and he was in Sierra Leone, and they eat leaves of almost anything because they. And it was probably the first place I'd ever been that I found people who spent the biggest part of their day trying to find something to eat. And it might be a lizard. And they were close to the coast, and they would cast nets and try to catch fish, or there weren't many small mammals around. And then they would eat sweet potato leaves, and they would cook them like we would cook turnip greens or collard greens, and they would put peppers in them just to give them some flavor. And I thought I was going to starve to death. It was, I guess you get used to it. I mean, they would put some sort of fat in it if they had it. But it was an eye-opening experience because that we take so much for granted. I mean, we can go to the H-E-B or Kroger or whatever, and it is amazing at the amount of stuff that we can buy, most of it that we don't need. And these people would stand in line, 100 people to get a piece of bread that long, and hope that they got to the counter before they ran out for the day. And it's just amazing. And those are the people of the 9 billion, I think, who are going to be most at risk and most vulnerable, and are going to need things like cowpeas that will be fairly easy to grow and provide protein, and you can eat the leaves and you can eat the whole thing and you can feed your goat. And I'm serious, that's, somebody with a goat is a fortunate person in some of these areas. I've actually run a couple of stories on, Blair Fanning has done some pieces for me on cow peas and how important they are, and some of the work being done. What else? Vegetables. Am I working on vegetables other than cow peas? Carrots? I know there's a maroon carrot. None of you have worked on the maroon carrot.
Didn't get into horticulture folks over here. Too hot to walk from the horticulture.
But that's the pampered, yeah. The cotton, corn, grain sorghum? Yeah, what are you doing with grain sorghum?
I'm working with some health food applications of it, high antioxidant, black sorghum.
Dr. Rooney? I've actually seen that is strange looking stuff. Is it close? Because I know he had some things that were pretty close to being released. Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are the advantages?
There's a bunch of health benefits, I guess.
So this would basically be food sorghum instead of for livestock.
Yeah.
Made for flour and things like that. Yeah. I've heard you can make beer out of sorghum.
That's not too bad.
Got several headlines out of that one.
One grain that's pretty widely available that's oils release called Red Bridge. It's that gluten-free cheese liquid.
Any of you working on energy crops, switchgrass or some of the sweet sorghums? Or
There's several in here.
Good. What are you doing with it?
I'm crossing sorghum with a wild relative to try to get biomass.
I have a couple of wild relatives.
Yeah. That's what relatives are supposed to be unless you are the wild one.
Yeah, well, my brothers would say that. So you're trying to increase the sugar content, or?
This is just for biomass.
Just for biomass?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been working on it?
About 8 months.
8 months?
Yes, sir.
So you haven't really accomplished everything you want yet?
Yeah, got some momentum.
Well, good. Very good.
I work with Napier grass. It's a
Napier?
Napier. Yes, sir. And making interspecific hybrids and can see them. So trying to integrate cold tolerance into it because it's a tropical grass, as well as making sterile perennial feedstocks.
Interesting. No switchgrass, sugarcane.
Sugarcane's in Weslaco.
Yeah. Is that where they are? Is it hot in there?
They're in Ludlow.
Oh, they're in Ludlow. Is it hot up there?
It's hot there too.
Worse too.
It's not too bad.
Has it rained?
More this year than in past years. We had one good timely rain, maybe about 6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
It was good.
Timely rain about 6 weeks ago. Texas. Yeah, only timely rain about 6 weeks ago. Yeah. And you'll get another timely rain in about another 6 weeks. Anything you want to know from me?
While the students are thinking about what they want to ask, would you address what you see in the way of organic agriculture in the state of Texas? And then, since all these guys are going to be plant breeders, maybe something about the partnership between print folks like you and variety development companies, and how we are symbiotic, synergistic in getting information to farmers.
Let's talk about the organics first. I have absolutely no qualms whatsoever with organic agriculture. I think it's a great idea. And if I were willing to work that hard and had 10 acres of land or 5 acres of land close to Dallas or Atlanta, I think an organic production facility would be like a gold mine. But I don't think it'll feed the world. I think it's a growing, no pun intended, segment of agriculture. It is part of agriculture. I think it's something that that we don't cast aspersions at because they have a niche and they serve a purpose and there is a market for it. And a farmer, I think, is foolish not to recognize a market opportunity. If he's capable and willing to do what's necessary to produce organic agriculture. I think some of the claims that are made for the benefits of agriculture are overblown. I don't see it as a more environmentally friendly way because in most cases it's going to take more land because you're really going to get a little less. Although I'm sure there are some who, if they know how to do it, at least on the short term, can probably get close to or equal the yields that you can make conventional. There's some advantages if they're using rotation and cover crops and green manures and those kind of things. For large scale production agriculture, I don't think it will be the answer to feeding 9 billion people. Now, this other question is more complicated, and you're going to have to pose that one more time.
Well, all of these young folks are going to be plant breeders,
Right.
Somewhere in the development chain of new varieties. And I was wanting you to address how you see the future, how you, as an agricultural editor, how you cooperate with seed companies in getting information to producers, and you see that, is that going to continue in the future? You see the American farmers still wanting to pick up the Delta Farm Press, the Southwest Farm Press, and Western Farm Press, and get their information that way?
It's rapidly changing. I think we will always have that collaboration. But how many of you, when you want news, you go to the internet? Raise your hands. How many of you? How many of you pick up a newspaper?
Every morning.
Every week. Yeah, so do I. But we're old.
Speak for yourself.
I probably spend from 60 to 70% of my time now working on web-based information. And I'm not sure I do as good a job with print as I used to or as I need to. But publishing is going. That's where it's headed. Because when Wayne and I get to the point where we can't pick up the paper anymore, which could happen any day. You guys are going to. You'll be reading it on the web or you on your smartphone. And right now I think we have an audience that's probably divided in thirds. We have farmers who are my age, probably a little bit younger, and I'm 64. I would say from 55 to 64. A lot of them are still they'll pick up the print, and that's what they want to read. Below that, I would say down to about 40, maybe a little younger than that. They're probably half and half. A lot of them still want to read something that they can shuffle the pages, and but they also go to the internet to find information. I read a newspaper every morning, and then I have several news sites on my computer. That as soon as I sit down on my computer, I'll plug those up and I'll read those too. Just headlines. You'll see if there's anything that attracts my attention. And then the readers we have who are just coming back to the farm, and they just graduated from A&M or that other school up there. They are, they're going to the web. Now, how we collaborate, we also have to be careful about working with industry. Because, you know, I have nothing to sell but credibility. If I lose my credibility, say if I don't do anything but Delta Pine cotton stories, then nobody's going to believe what I write about cotton. So, and I told Laura, I spent 18 long, dark, dreary months in public relations in Kansas City, between working in the Southeast and working here. And I was working with agricultural clients. And I didn't really enjoy that work, but I learned a lot about working with industry and media. And what they want is not always the same thing. What we want is to provide information to farmers that they can use. And if FiberMax produces a new cotton variety that's going to average 5 bales an acre, you don't have to spray insecticide on it. It's tolerant of every herbicide known to man, and some of them that we haven't invented yet. Then I need to write about that so that farmers know it's available. When Case IH comes out with a new tractor, that's better than anything they ever had before, then I need to write about that. I don't really need to go out in the farm because somebody from John Deere says, hey, I got this farmer over here who doesn't use anything but green tractors, and you need to do a story on him. Why do I need to do a story on him? Because he just uses green tractors? No. Is it, you know, maybe he's growing, you know, corn more efficiently than anybody else in the county. I don't need to do a story on him. And, you know, the fact that he uses green tractors is beside the point. But I think we're always going to be interested in new products. We're going to be interested in what you do as a university. I think this is another frustration. My first job in agriculture was as an experiment station editor at Clemson University. Yay! And every year since that first year that I've been in agriculture, I don't think there's been one time in that length of time that research budgets at land-grant universities actually increased. I mean, they've been cut and cut and cut, so there's very little left to cut anymore. And it has always been so important for a non-biased, credible institution to do ag research on new varieties, on mechanics, on chemistry, so that a farmer can trust it. And I know, you know, a lot of what you have to do now, you have to collaborate with companies, and I'm glad you do. Otherwise, it wouldn't get done because of the funding. But I think it is important that we keep at least some semblance of credibility in extension and in agricultural research and in what you guys are doing, so that you can work independently and credibly to do the amazing stuff that you need to do. And I really do applaud you for what you're doing.
Yeah, I had a comment about agendas, and you mentioned Monsanto had done a great job in the early days of GMO communication to scientists and people in agriculture, etc. And while I'm a fan of Monsanto, I've had students there, made careers there, did fantastic work, I would point out that 25 years ago, there was a view within Monsanto that GMOs were going to eliminate the need for a number of disciplines within agriculture. And that view was vehemently expressed that these GMOs were going to solve, we don't need any more weed people, we don't need any more entomologists, we don't need any more, you name it. If the gene did it, folks that couldn't beat their way out of a cell wall were going to solve all of that. Well, we have found that technology is incredibly useful, but when the first outbreak here in the Brazos Valley, about 2 years after BT cotton was released, occurred, the scientists who had worked to screen that cotton and develop it up to that point, you could count on one hand. So the scientific community as a whole was not aware of it. It had been kept highly proprietary and within the genetic engineering group. When the outbreak occurred here in the fields after deployment to farmers and everything else, there's newspaper reports at the time. For all I know, Southwest Farm Press reported on it. But farmers were screaming that they had bullworms attacking their cotton that they paid $35 an acre to protect. And Monsanto said, call your county agent. And the county agent said, people aren't hiring scouts anymore, they aren't doing anything. I was never involved in the training of all this. And if you want to see why extension people go crazy, it's because they're saddled with that kind of a responsibility. Now, Monsanto got the message fairly quickly, and within a few years began hiring entomologists and hired a rather large cadre of them, and I would say they have a much more balanced program. Within 5-6 years, they had a much more balanced program, but that was a teachable moment that was needed. So if I were a young person today, I would ask constantly, what is the agenda going on and how does my science interface with that? And sometimes you have to bite the bullet if you're going to have any resources to work with at all.
Yeah.
And with global warming and GMOs and all those kinds of things, I don't know whether that is a great place for a naive, understanding nature scientists to spend their time and effort, because there's going to be a lot of distractions. But not just the public, and I agree with you, has been misled as to the challenges that health and other things are related to GMOs. I think there's extremely small risk there of any kind, but scientists themselves often aren't communicated or part of that system either, and it's a human nature to have an agenda and just to eliminate stuff that doesn't meet your agenda.
All right, sorry to interrupt, Dr. Harris. It's 1 o'clock, so if you have somewhere to go, feel free to leave. Otherwise, I guess y'all want to hear Dr. Smith?
Yeah, I want to, first of all, thank you very much for taking the time and coming here and talking to us. It is illuminating that your views are almost our views, so we are talking on our behalf. I had pleasure to meet you because you ran a couple of stories on cowpea and I was in the middle of it, so I'm glad that you were here. And cowpea, as she said, is the future crop, legume crop in the world, so we are working along that line. Farm Press and many articles that you write is very much geared towards people interested in agriculture, and that is serving its purpose very well. But what is really needed is, we scientists are poor communicators, right, from Borlaug days and so on. And we write scientific articles and, we are very shy on putting public articles. And most of the media doesn't listen to scientists. There is not much any channel that has science part of it coming, which is little controversy. They don't want to run it because there will be no advertisement, even Discovery and others. So my suggestion to you will be, and since you buy views of scientists, is how can you give another extension to your press, so that in addition to the information you are giving to the agricultural community, you also educate the people who say that Roundup Ready in the seed are going in our body and so on. So can we have a concerted effort to educate those environmentalists and others Some of them don't want to be educated and I don't care about it. But many of them would like to be educated. And how do we bring, so my suggestion is your own press can run a column on some topical issues. And scientists can write article, you can shape it up. So like organic versus inorganic, GM controversy. And even sometimes GM is being hyped, overhyped. The only thing you can lay on are the 2-3 traits, BT, Roundup Ready, and maybe some quality genes. We started from 1980. You see, this is our 35 years of the work. And all we are talking about is 2-3. But some, like you were making a comment, some people think GM is our answer. No, conventional agriculture has to continue. So some good stories, it can come out in a regular basis, and then can you link up with the popular media, the television and so on, where they can flash it out. Maybe it will not be acceptable in the beginning, but I would like person like you to help the science part of it to come out. Organic versus, I'm very clear, organic or inorganic, the plants need nutrition and protection. If you can provide nutrition and protection, by all means. But the study run by Crop Science Society in 2006 shows that in Europe and US, 35% yield decrease in organic farming. Who can afford that? But yes, small vegetable growing or something. And so stories like this should come out in forefront so that we can educate people. Fertilizer has become a bad thing because it will pollute your water. But if you manage it well, properly do it, Netherlands people, they are using 500 kilograms of fertilizer per year. And they are the most beautiful country, more healthy people, everything is working because they manage it well. So stories like this should come out more in front, and some of us can help in this, but then, person like you should think how to move it forward. Sorry, I talked too much.
Well, we are now part of a large corporation, and one of the segments, we have publications that go to grocery store managers. So I can see some symbiosis that can happen there at some point, some sharing of ideas with those publications. And I've suggested that, but if the corporation doesn't see a dollar sign behind it, they're not going to do it, and that's unfortunate. But I agree with you, and as I said, that's one of my biggest frustrations is not being able to get the value of the family farm and the value of technology and the value of sound science so the consumers can see it. Thank you all. I appreciate the being here. I applaud you for what you're doing. I wish you all much success. And this is how to get in touch with me. Drop me an email, tell me what you're doing, and I may do a story on it.
Let's thank Mr. Smith.
Before all the students run away, my graduate students already know, my undergrads know from the first day of class, I'm a bit of an outside-the-box lateral thinker. And since Dr. Smith has allowed me to interject some chaos into the seminar, any ideas you have that you've not raised yet, all ideas are welcome, so send them my way, please. All right, see y'all next week.
Thank you.